Merlin's Lab is a sponsor on today's episode. On behalf of Merlin's Lab, I'm proud to announce our newest supplement, Merlin's Silver Solution. Having anti-parasitic, antibacterial, immune boosting, and anti-inflammatory effects. It aids in cell regeneration, is a powerful antioxidant, and is also pet-friendly. Purify your water and get rid of pesky odors without the harm of chemical fragrances. Visit the site at merlinslab.myshopify.com for more. Check out the site now and get your own 7 ppm Merlin's Lab Silver Solution. Use code JOURNEY2TRUTH for 10% off store-wide. We here at Merlin's Lab thank Journey to Truth for the opportunity to share this message with you. Please enjoy the show.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. A few quick announcements before we get started. Just a reminder, part 2 of our Inner Earth webinar is coming up this Sunday, 5 p.m. Central Time on our Patreon. If you missed part 1, you'll want to go back and check that out. That was focused primarily on the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases, and it got some great feedback. And that link is below in the description. If you want to sign up for the Patreon, it's only $5. And you don't have to stay signed up if you don't want to, if you just want to sign up and check out the webinar. But we do appreciate people that stick around because we're posting a lot of great content there. So stay tuned for part 2 of our webinar, 5 p.m. Central Time this Sunday. And Scott Wolter is joining us today, and he is going to be speaking at XCon conference. I'm also going to be speaking at the end of October 30th, 31st, and November 1st. And Springfield, Missouri, and I figured, it would be awesome it would be fun just to have Scott on and kind of talk about what he's going to be speaking about at the conference. And we're going to get into some interesting connections between the Knights Templar and the underground network cities, and potentially the connection to Atlantis and the Atlanteans. So I'm really excited to get into this today with Scott. So welcome to the show, Scott.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's only a little over, 2 weeks before we're going to be getting together down in Springfield. And I look forward to meeting you guys in person. And I really look forward to the presentations that we have. Haley's going to be there as well. And she's going to give a great presentation. But it's really going to be fun. And I'm going to talk about some new things. I'm starting to weave in things that I've been sitting on and until the right time, and that time is now.
Well, that's exciting. And for anyone who doesn't know, I'm sure you recognize Scott from American Unearthed on History Channel. He's a forensic geologist, right? Yeah.
Geologist, yep.
And an author. And we're just excited to have you on. I watched your show over the years, and I never imagined I'd be sitting here talking to you. So this is really cool.
It's an amazing show. I love that show. Yeah.
It's a really cool experience. And one thing I do want to say before we get started is one of my favorite things I've heard you say in an interview in the past. You said, I trust rocks more than I trust some people.
I actually, I've always lived by that mantra because it's true, right? I mean, rocks don't have egos. Rocks don't have agendas. Right. They just are, and they tell the truth. And so I trust them. And my faith was well founded in the rocks because everybody around me, when I first started working on the Kensington Rune Stone, starting back in 2000, was telling us this thing's a hoax and everything else. And I'm like, well, I appreciate your opinion. Do you have any evidence to support it? And as it turns out, they really didn't. But the rock had a lot to say, and I trusted the rock, so I followed it, and it led me to the truth. And I just got to tell you, as a geologist, rocks have never let me down. So that's why I trust them. But people often let you down because they have egos, they have agendas. Rockstone.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
Well said. Exactly.
So we're getting ready to cover the inner earth in our upcoming webinar, in particular, like underground cities and
Right.
the Knights Templar, which you're going to be speaking about, the Templar connection at the conference coming up. They also are known to have gone underground, and they have a tunnel network themselves. They were moving religious artifacts, and then you even mentioned something before we went on camera about a potential connection to the Atlanteans. So I'll just give you the stage and kind of let you explain to us and the audience what's going on there.
Well, I think one thing I would like to do is tell you that you're familiar with Gaia streaming network, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in June, I filmed a 10-episode series with a good friend, a fellow Freemason and Knights Templar, Tim Hogan, who is the current Grand Master of an order I belong to that is not Masonic, called the Martinist Order. And one of the things that we did in this series is we just decided, and as Grand Master, we sort of take his cues on subject matter that we should and should not be talking about. And essentially what he said is, it's time to drop all the bombs. It's time to not hold back. It's time to tell the truth. And so really one of the things that I'll talk about is essentially the Knights Templar are part of an ancient tradition. The true Knights Templar is part of an ancient tradition that goes all the way back to a high culture that existed prior to the Younger Dryas called the Atlanteans. And one of the things that I think it's important for people to understand, Atlantis was not a place. People have been chasing after some location that, disappeared, underwater. And there is some truth to that on one hand, but essentially the Atlanteans was a high culture that existed prior to a catastrophic event that happened called the Younger Dryas. And it looks like now this was a series of comets and extraterrestrial debris that intersects with our solar system's orbit about every 26,000 years. The last time was just over 12,800 years ago, about 13,000 years ago, when the Younger Dryas period happened. Now, the Atlanteans knew this was going to happen, so they prepared. And I think one of the best examples of the preparation of that is a place called Göbekli Tepe that archaeologists have been saying for a number of years was intentionally buried or covered up to protect it. The question is, why did they do this? Well, if you go back and look at the timing, this is right as the Younger Dryas impact, the catastrophic event, which, and I don't want to sit here and sound like I know everything. I think I know what my understanding of it is, but there's a lot of new research that's coming out that is definitely supporting the narrative that I've understood for a while now. Actually, I attended a really, really amazing conference in the early part of June called the Cosmic Summit, which was in, where was it? Was it Asheville, North Carolina? Yeah. And George Howard was the guy that put that on, and it was just fantastic. There were a number of speakers that really the focus of that conference was to talk about the Younger Dryas and related aspects to it, of course. But it really looks like a major series of impacts caused catastrophic destruction and almost wiped out that high culture of the Atlanteans that existed at that time. You leave it? Okay. Have a good workout. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Anyway, so they prepared for that. And one of the things that they did was they buried their observatories like Göbekli Tepe. They also carefully hid underground, in most cases, ancient knowledge that that they were aware of that they wanted to leave for whoever might be the survivors of this this catastrophe, to rebuild the society and the culture that existed before, that it looks like operated on a very high intellectual level, on a very high spiritual level, and probably had more knowledge and a better relationship with the extraterrestrials, that only now I think the information is really starting to become public now. I think the governments around the world that have known about this for a long time recognize it's time to come clean. So that's happening right now. And so what happened is this information was passed down through different traditions, who were the ideological and biological descendants of this Atlantean high culture. The Templars were just one phase of this descendancy of, if you will, of this culture. And when it was their turn, they asserted themselves in a way that was absolutely brilliant, that few people truly understand and recognize today. They founded the order by establishing a medieval monastic order called the Cistercians, the white monks with the black tunics, which represented the essence of their ideology of monotheistic dualism, a single deity that had dualistic aspects that keep things in balance, right? Yin and yang.
Yeah.
That whole concept of opposites. It's symbolized on artifacts like the Kensington Rune Stone with the hooked X symbol that I've written about and actually trademarked several years ago. But that represented the essence of their ideology. And this was an important thing that scholars did not understand and completely bungled when artifacts like the Kensington Rune Stone, the Spirit Pond Rune Stones, the Narragansett Rune Stone, and other documents that are now coming forward that are littered with this symbol, which was an ancient sacred symbol to them that really goes back to the Atlanteans and beyond. So it's now time to talk about that. They were master tunnelers going back to the Atlanteans, and they actually created sanctuaries underground to try to survive that cataclysm that showed up at the Younger Dryas period. And a lot of them did survive, but most of them were wiped out. So the Templars were established by the tradition to form this monastic order and go into Jerusalem to establish a base of operations by using the Roman Catholic Church to serve their own purposes. Now, historians and, of course, the church will tell you that they were fighting for Christendom. And on one level, that is exactly what they were doing. But their true mission and the true purpose was something much different: to establish a base of operations in the region, to go around the region, into Egypt, into Turkey, into Lebanon, certainly Israel and other places, to recover that knowledge, that information, the relics, the remains of people from their tradition in the past, with the ultimate goal of bringing it over here to North America to establish or reestablish that high culture that they used to call the Atlanteans, that we now call the United States of America. Unfortunately, there are other forces at work that are not on the same page with the plan. And so this is why things have become muddied. This is why a lot of this truth has been suppressed. But the tradition continues on, both ideologically and biologically. And, you know, we're working to try to reestablish that high culture that recognizes that everybody on this planet has a God-given right or deity-given right, or whatever you want to call that higher power. In Freemasonry, we call deity the great architect of the universe. And there's a reason for that. but everybody is born with certain inalienable rights. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what color you are, what creed you are, what sex you are, what sex you aren't. Who gives a shit? Right? I mean, all of our blood is red. And the sooner we recognize that and stop all this goddamn killing that's going on in the Middle East right now, and it's going to spread if we don't recognize that this is what needs to happen. We all need each other. And the point is this, guys, once humans come together and figure our shit out, then and only then will out there, those societies, those cultures, those races in the interstellar community will start to welcome us because we belong with them. And, can't happen until we get our act together here.
Well said. And I
agree more.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like why they would never show up in a time of chaos whenever it could potentially have a negative effect. If we're not ready, it could only make things worse, to be quite honest.
Right.
And that's a reality that a lot of the people who are just waiting for a disclosure, waiting for them to come, we have to understand that, like, we got to get our shit together first. And, that's a whole other conversation. But going back to the underground network, and you've traveled all over the world. You've seen some of these sites yourself, and the construction. Do you think a lot of these tunnels, like the technology that they were using to build these underground cities and these tunnels, does this look like something ancient, like beyond, like the Atlanteans did it and the Templars just moved in? Or do you think they were digging them themselves, or they had access or they were privy to certain technologies and knowledge that we aren't today?
I think the answer is all of the above. I think a lot of the underground workings that we see in places like the Middle East I think a lot of those were not built as permanent underground dwellings. They weren't designed to be permanent, right? And they were to survive this catastrophe. And exactly what their plan was for how long they needed to be underground is unclear. I don't think it was intended to be permanent. When you see a lot of these structures, as amazing as they are, I just don't think it was permanently designed to be that way. I think ultimately their plan was to come back and inhabit, the earth. And I think the evidence for that we see in a lot of these structures, these temples and buildings and amazing structures to see around the world, in Egypt and Central America, and really all around the world, that were constructed with a high technology that we're still trying to figure out. I mean, this is something that absolutely is clear. Now, those structures seem to have been built with more of a permanency in mind, right? I mean, look, the pyramids, let's forget about what these Egyptologists are saying 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. That's bullshit. They date back to the Younger Dryas and beyond. We have no idea when they were originally built. We have a lot of evidence that suggests that in their prime, they were covered with white, beautiful marble stones that when the sun hit them, they would absolutely glow like a laser beam. Now, exactly why they did that, there's a lot of ideas about that, but I think that'll all come out in due time. But I think the permanent structures primarily were above grade. I think the temporary structures were below grade. And the same was true with the Templars. Although a lot of these structures that they did build underground are pretty amazing, I don't think they were designed to be permanent underground dwellings, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so as far as the temples being created from a technology that we just can't explain, I agree with that. So when you're coming across some of these artifacts that don't fit the official narrative, do those come across the same way? I'm sure. Like, do they look completely ET? Like a human didn't make this? Have you?
Well, so, you know what? Now that you mention that, I haven't really thought about it like that, because most of the artifacts that I've looked at either were frauds. I mean, there are frauds out there, and we've identified those and called it as we saw it. In some cases, very begrudgingly, because some of the artifacts I've seen, I wanted to be real more than anybody, but they just weren't. But those are in the minority. They're relatively few and far between. And frankly, when I come across fakes, they reveal themselves in the laboratory pretty quickly. So that's one category of artifact. But the ones that are real, that were carved in most cases by whoever, most of the ones that I've been looking at date back to the medieval period. They were created by the Knights Templar, things like the Kensington Rune Stone. And what I see with these artifacts is that they were carved into rock that's very durable and long lasting. And when you carve something in rock, it's not permanent forever, but it's going to be there for an awful long time, provided something doesn't happen to it. But the Kensington Rune Stone, for example, was carved into a rock called a Paleoproterozoic metagraywacke. And that particular rock is extremely dense, extremely hard, and it was carved with steel tools, which of course they had back at that time. I mean, their swords were made of steel, right? Mm-hmm. So having a hammer and chisel is not difficult, but these things were built to last for sure. And they did. And they're still here with us now. And, they really wanted these things to survive. The runestone is a land claim. That was the stake in the ground that the Templars put in here just a few decades after the put down in 1307. It was put in a strategic geographic location that, to my knowledge, I'm the first person to even talk about. But again, when you look at what's happened in the past, these academics have dismissed it as being a hoax. So why would you spend any time thinking about why it was put there? Because it's a hoax. The rock told me it was real. Therefore, somebody carved it. They came from some place, and they came here for some reason. Absolute truths if this thing is authentic. And I think we figured out the answer to those questions as well.
Right. So as far as I'm gonna switch it up a little bit.
All right.
Well, actually, let me ask you this first. Working with the History Channel, it's interesting. Academia, shuts down a lot of your conclusions and your results because
they don't shut them down. They just say that they don't agree with it, and that I'm a fringe archaeologist or a fringe geologist, and they just call me names. And
pseudo archaeologist. They love
look, archaeology to me. Let me just go on a quick diatribe, okay? I just got to tell you this. When I first did the rune stone and I wrote my report, and I said it was authentic. I had people deluge me and just attack me. And, I said, look, I'm a reasonable guy. Okay. I've written my report. You disagree. Let's have a conversation. Right. Tell me where I screwed up. I'm not a perfect human being. If I made a mistake, I'll fix it. Point it out. Okay, let's be adults here and have this conversation. I didn't make a mistake. They just didn't like the result.
Right.
Well, too freaking bad. I mean, sometimes life doesn't go your way. And so, of course, I said, point it out. They couldn't point anything out. So what do? They attack the messenger when they can't attack the message. So that's bullshit, guys. And I'm not going to put up with it. And so I haven't. And so what they do is they just come after me and they make all these claims instead of being adults and having a discussion. Now, here's the other thing that I would like to tell you that to me is kind of incredible. They call me a fringe archaeologist, that I don't understand scientific method, right? I have run a materials forensic laboratory for almost 40 years. I do hard science investigations all day, every freaking day of my life, okay? There's nobody that understands scientific method better than me, because that's all I do. Yet these people are trying to tell the world that I don't understand it. But yet I worked on projects like the Pentagon after 9/11. And I didn't go after that job. I got a call from the government and they assigned me to that project. And I like to think that they did that because they think I know what I'm doing. Okay. And I've done a lot of other projects. My job, I'm not here to try to brag about it, but I'm not going to listen to that BS. Okay. And the other thing for the archaeologists, let me think about this. Okay. You guys are digging in the dirt, right? Well, last I checked, dirt is weathered rock. Okay. I'm a geologist. You find lithic artifacts, arrowheads, spear points made out of, oh yeah, rock. And you find pottery, right? Which is fired clay, which is a rock. Maybe instead of attacking me, maybe here's an idea. How about collaboration? Maybe we can work together, okay? And get to the bottom of these truths instead of you guys sticking by your dogma. And the other thing I want to point out, geology is a hard science. We are taught scientific method. No offense to archaeology, to historians, to anthropologists, to linguists, to runologists, but these are humanities disciplines, okay? They are not hard science disciplines. So don't give me any of this BS that I don't understand scientific method. Really? I would venture to say that because you guys couldn't figure out a lot of these artifacts, maybe you're the ones that need a little coaching in scientific method. And I'm here to help you. So as soon as you guys are done attacking me, I'm an easy guy to get along with. However, I am an old linebacker. I played 4 years of college, 4 years in minor league. You want to go? I'll go. I don't care how old I am. I can still hit like hell. But I'm also easy to get along with. So let's have a beer and let's work together to solve these mysteries because I can help you if you want to be helped.
Right.
How was that?
I think that was incredible. Yeah. Mic drop.
That was amazing.
Add up, boys. Let's go.
Yeah. I think ultimately what happens is when you come and challenge somebody when they've already made up their mind and they've already came to their conclusion, it threatens their belief system because now they've developed a belief around this artifact or religion or whatever it is. And
their identity is attached to that. It's a threat to their identity.
Yeah,
right, guys.
When you challenge that, they're threatened. And it's not so much that they don't want to believe it. It's so much that they don't want to let go of what they believe in.
You hit the nail on the head. That's a really, really good point. And let me just say one other thing about scientific method that goes to the heart of the point you just made. Okay. And let's face it, we're all human beings, right? You work very hard to try to solve whatever question it is that you're investigating, if you're an archaeologist or if you're a forensic geologist or whatever the case may be. And when you do think that you have found the right answer, whether we like to agree or believe it or not, there's a certain amount of emotional investment that's involved in this, right? I mean, you worked your ass off, you've drawn a conclusion, you've written a paper, and you're proud of that, right? Well, remember this, right? Part of the scientific method is always being open to new evidence that may come along that frankly might flush your previous conclusion, right? Mm-hmm. And let's all be honest with each other. Nobody likes when that happens, right? However, if you are a true scientist and you look objectively at this data and it demands that you have to change your opinion and draw a different conclusion, that doesn't make you stupid. That makes you smart. That's what scientific method is all about. And I got to tell you, it's happened to me a few times in my career. And you know what? I'll never forget. I was involved in a parking ramp collapse where 2 construction workers were killed. And what happened was it boiled down to a critical connection between 2 concrete members that were grouted. And the question that we had to answer, because that connection failed, the ramp came down, these guys were killed. A lot of people were injured. And it came down to the question of, was that grout set when the failure occurred? And it had been applied that day. It was a rapid set grout. But the question was it set or was it still plastic and not set? Now, the samples that I was sent indicated to me that the grout had set. And that's what I wrote in my report. And I remember, I'll never forget, I flew out to Washington, D.C. This happened out in Washington, in Virginia. And there was a young technician who was on site that day taking samples of concrete and samples of the grout. And we sat down during the day and we looked at this critical connection. It had been pulled off to the site. It was in an evidence room. And he looked at me and he said, Scott, I just don't think it was set. And I said, well, what makes you say that? And we eventually, we talked around a bunch of engineers and, there was law enforcement there and all this stuff. And that night we went to a bar and we were playing pool, having a couple of beers. And I said, Matt, let's talk about this. Why did you say that? He said, well, you know what? He said, it was raining during the day and then it started to sleet. It was cold. And we had placed that grout. It was packed in. But when the temperature went down, he said, I just don't think it's set. Now, just so your audience understands, concrete is a heat generating chemical reaction. And whether it's heat or it's grout or it's mortar, temperature matters. The colder the temperature, the longer it takes to set up. So I said to him, I said, are you sure? He said, yes, I really believe that. Now, you got to understand, this guy was a technician. And he was intimidated by being in the room with those guys. But it wasn't until we got alone in a relaxed setting. And, I think he felt like he could trust me, that he could really tell me what he thought. So the next day I went to the engineer in charge and I said, I want more samples. I said, cut that goddamn connection and give me those samples and we'll take another look. And guess what I found? I found evidence that grout had deformed plastically. In other words, not brittly. Brittle deformation happens when it's set. Plastic deformation means it wasn't set. Matt was right, and I had to change my conclusion because I had new evidence. And you know what? I wasn't upset. I wasn't defensive. I was happy as hell because we got the right answer. And there were a lot of people whose careers were at stake and their businesses were at stake, and a lot of money was at stake based on the conclusion that I wrote. And I had to change it based on that evidence. And that's one example of a time when I was wrong initially. Now, I didn't have the right samples, but that's what I'm saying. If you get new evidence, you change it.
Right.
If that's what the evidence says.
Right. And that is real science.
Yeah.
That is what science is supposed. That's the definition of science.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
The way it's supposed to work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting, though, that the human element also played a role in this, because he did not want to speak up in front of all those people. It wasn't until we got alone that, he really felt comfortable saying that. And he's a young guy. He didn't have the experience and he wasn't sure, but his gut was telling him something and his gut was right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well said. And, you have to be open-minded to that stuff. I mean, things are supposed to change. We're supposed to grow and evolve. We hold on to the old ways. Like nothing, we just can't, nothing is set in stone in this reality. Like it's constantly shifting and changing. So we have to learn to let go of things that we just, that no longer serve us. And
there's a few universal things in life, right? One of them is nobody gets out of this thing alive. But the other thing that is a universal truth is change. All things change, all things evolve. Everything doesn't stay the same all the time. And I think we forget that sometimes. We get comfortable in our lives or in what we think we know. And we forget that, all things change, all things end. And we just have to be mindful of that.
Right. Like somebody you see somebody from high school and they're like, man, you changed. I'm like, yeah, we're supposed to. Like
we're supposed to.
I'm not supposed to live.
Yeah, it's called getting older.
Right.
But
that's how growth. You can't have growth without change. So people become attached to how things are in one time, and then their growth stops.
Right. One of the things I realized was happening to me whenever I went through my initial awakening and, just had that consciousness awareness explosion. I realized that I was living the same year over and over and calling it a life. Like I was
Right.
just like in
Right.
repeat, and I finally snapped out of it, and that's whenever we started the show and all this stuff happened. But and that's the type of people that would come up to me and they would say, "You've changed," and I look at them and they're in that
They're
pattern. They're still in that cycle that I was in, and we have to find a way out and take that leap whenever it shows up. And that's the scariest thing ever, because I had to leave my job in construction. A whole number of things happened, but perfect example.
Well, you know what though? I mean, you felt it in your heart. You knew that it was the direction that you needed to go. And, I think a lot of people, look, that's a scary thing. I don't care who you are. That's scary to sort of have that awakening that you talked about and to act upon it, to say, I don't want to live my life like this. I want to do this. And, I've had those moments too, but not everybody's able to do that. And, it also goes back to what we talked about before, how, everybody has these God-given rights and, we have all these differences, but yet at our core, we're all the same. And I remember years ago when I started to travel a lot, and my dad was an airline pilot. So I had free passes back in the day. I could go anywhere and I took advantage of it. And I always found it interesting to go to different places, even just within our own country. You go to the South, or you go to the West, you go to the East, you meet people that think, that talk differently, that do things differently. And I mean, I just tell people, and let alone going to different countries and other parts of the world where you meet people that, do things very differently than you. But I mean, I just tell people, look, I know what my buddies in high school do. I know exactly what that's all about. I don't need to, stay there forever. I want to meet new people. I want to learn about how other people think and what they enjoy, and, trying new foods and going to different places. I mean, I've always been like that, but some people just sort of never get out of that comfort zone, right, and venture off and try to learn about other people and other places. And I got to tell you, as much as I love my country and I love living here in Minnesota, I go to other places and I find out, you know what, they make coffee better than I do, or they do this better than I do. And you know what, I didn't even know about that. That's really cool. And you're never going to know unless you try it. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And I've been doing quite a bit of traveling the past few years as well, which is one of the beautiful things of like breaking free from that loop that I was stuck in. But what I've noticed is that we complain about a lot of things that most other countries are grateful for. Like they would be grateful to have the things that we complain about.
Exactly.
And that was a big eye opener for me. And like the mundane, stupid things that we get upset about, like you just let go of that. You're like, wow, at least you go live with some other people somewhere for 2 weeks or whatever. It's a different way of life. Yeah.
You think you got problems. Yeah. You got nothing to worry about. I'll tell you another thing that it's germane now because I play a lot of basketball, and that's one of my workouts. And then, lift light. I don't lift heavy anymore. I don't need to, but we take our health for granted. And I've been very fortunate. I've had a relatively healthy life, and I've made a point to do that. I thought if I want to live a long, healthy life, the one thing I have control over is taking care of my body. But as you get older, you get aches and pains, and I got this damn sore knee, and I took a week off from playing hoops. And yesterday I played for the first time in about 2 weeks, and I'm going to be okay, but it's sore today. But little things like your health, I think, when you're healthy and things are going well, especially when you're younger, you just take it for granted. Well, let me tell you something. Don't take it for granted, because as you get older, stuff breaks down. And that would be my one advice to younger people is take care of your body. Do healthy things. Don't smoke cigarettes, for Christ's sake. You don't look cool. You look stupid. And just take care. I'm sorry. When I see somebody smoking, their stock just drops instantly, and there is no excuse for it. I know it's addicting, but it's going to kill you if you don't quit.
So, working for the History Channel, did you ever run into any restrictions or limitations as far as what you were able to say or show on the show? I mean, or you're not allowed to talk about that.
I can say whatever I want.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, I'll tell you a couple of things, but I want to preface everything that I say by, I worked for a number of different television networks. I worked for many different production companies. I've done, quite a bit of TV over the last 15 years, and I've had a great time doing it. I was treated wonderfully by everybody that I've ever worked with. I've worked with brilliant people, fun people that I call lifelong friends now. And I just want to say that anything negative I might say here after this, I want to temper it by saying I've always been treated very well professionally. I've had a lot of fun, and I was compensated fairly. So that's the first thing I want to say. But having said that, when I did American Unearthed, I told them before I did it, I'm not going to do anything that I feel is unethical, is improper, or I'm sure as hell not going to lie to the audience. And I will tell you, there are shows out there right now airing that do that all the time. And so you can be sure that I never lied to the audience. Now, did we go into act outs, into commercials and sort of build something up and try to get people through commercial? Absolutely. You have to do that to try to keep them to, stay with the show, because people have short attention spans. And if you don't, they'll change the channel. And we don't want that. But that said, we never built something up that was complete BS. Did we maybe go a little over the top? Yeah, sure we did. But that's just part of the business. There was a couple of other shows that I've done where my words were edited, and I was pissed off. And I said, if you ever do it again, there's going to be problems. There was one time when, and I'll just tell you the story. I don't care. The show's not on anymore, but it was called Pirate Treasure of the Knights Templar. And I was asked to help out on that show because they had trouble getting diving permits and they needed content. So I came and I helped them when American Unearthed was on hold. But one of the things that happened one day is we were actually in Jerusalem, and I was going to be working with one of the top archaeologists, the top archaeologist in Israel. And he was an older guy, and I was looking forward to doing this because the scene was in on the Temple Mount. The Palestinians the Muslims control the Temple Mount. And of course, there's a lot of Israeli history there. And I don't think I have to tell you that they don't get along very well. And so one of the things that they did just to piss off the Israelis is they bulldozed a certain section of the area next to the Kidron Valley into the river. And what they did was they mixed up intentionally about 5,000 plus years of history just to be assholes. And so what they did was the Israelis recovered material and they were sifting through it, trying to recover whatever artifacts they could and make sense of that material that was no longer, in sequence in its original positions. And so what I was going to do that day was sort through some of this material and then interpret it. That was the scene. So that morning, well, actually the night before, we were shooting B-roll in the walled city. And while the guys were shooting, I was done for the day. So I was going into these different shops, looking at old coins, looking for Templar coins. I was doing research for a book, Akhenaten to the Founding Fathers. In any case, I went into these shops and I found a bunch of stuff. And after about an hour, the field producer came up to me and he said, "Hey, Scott," he goes, "I'm interested in buying a Templar coin." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, I just went into a shop. I saw a bunch of cool stuff. Let's go in there." So we went into the shop. Guy pulls out a bunch of coins. And Ian said to me, "Well, Scott, you pick one." And I said, "Well, this is kind of a cool one here." And I asked the guy, "What do you want for it?" He said, "Well, I want $500. Well, I had done research before I went there, and I saw the same coin in the same condition for about $150. And I went to Ian. I said, no, hold off. I said, no, don't buy that one. He goes, nah, don't worry about it. It's history's money. We'll take it. Okay. So he bought it. The next morning, we're having breakfast, getting ready to go shoot with this archaeologist, right? And I was really excited about it. And Ian and the A-camera director called me over and said, Scott, we'd like to talk to you. So I went over to their table and I sat down. I go, what's up, guys? And they looked at me and they kind of looked at each other and they said, you're going to find a Templar coin today. And I said, oh, really? And I said, how is that going to happen? And they looked at each other and they said, well, and I said, you know what's not going to happen? I'm not going to find an effing Templar coin. Are you effing kidding me? I mean, obviously, that's why I bought the coin the next day. I said, you think we're going to plant a coin with the top archaeologist in Israel and disrespect him like that? Scott Wolter, Mr. Templar, is going to find a Templar coin. You know what we're not doing today, guys? We're not doing that. I was pissed off. And they backed off immediately. And guess what? We did the scene. And it was really funny because he was a cool dude. He just did whatever he wanted. And the first couple takes, he was like, yeah, those effing Palestinians. And I'm like, sir, can't use that.
No.
Got to do it again. And then he did it again. I go, sir. He goes, all right. So you know what I did find that day? I found a ceramic tile from the first temple period. Screw the Templar coin. I found a piece of ceramic glass from the first temple period. And it wouldn't have done anything for the show that we were shooting. And this is the kind of stuff that they do in TV sometimes. Now, they didn't force me to do it. Obviously, I wouldn't have done it. But some guy back at the network, thought that would be a cool idea, right? Well, no, we're not doing that. So anyway, I digress. Sorry.
I think it's great to hear these type of inside stories. And, we all know that things like that happen. And sometimes it's you watching the show and like, come on, like it's obvious that was staged.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah, there's one show in particular that does that right now that invited me 4 times to be on it. And I said no for that very reason.
I wonder if I could guess what show that is. So as far as the Knights Templar coming over here to America, do you think that they the whole Oak Island narrative where they're finding Templar artifacts, is that accurate in your opinion? Do you think that the Templars went to Oak Island?
Yes, they did. So it's interesting that you ask about that, because one of the things I am going to talk about at the conference is the documents that have been coming forward to us from a colleague and close friend. His name is Donald Rue. And without going into a long dissertation, I'll do it at the conference, but I think people are going to really enjoy hearing about these documents. Don has been getting documents from colleagues that he worked with at an agency that did work for our government. What's the official way I'm supposed to say this? The company did private security work for branches of our military. In any case, his best friend purchased a document in 1971 that he acquired in Rome. And it was basically Knights Templar records dating back to the mid-12th century, all the way up through the middle 18th century, actually all the way up to 1965. That's right, I forgot. And every so often they would update the records, they would update the maps, they would update the treasure locations. And Oak Island was one of those locations. Now, in this past year, 2023, Don received a trove of about 40 pages of documents, maps, drawings, encrypted messages, 6 encrypted messages that took us months to decode. 4 of those messages go into extensive detail about what happened on Oak Island. I can tell you this, guys. I know every single thing that happened on Oak Island from the beginning until the end. And Don and I wrote a book about it that right now a bunch of publishers are fighting to get a contract with us to publish. And I'm probably going to start talking about it pretty soon, but I want to wait for the book. It's incredible. It's an incredible story. But I will say this, don't hold your breath on the brothers finding anything anytime soon.
That's why I was going to ask you, do you think there's something still there? Like, besides something that might have been accidentally left behind, you know, small trinkets and stuff?
Let me put it to you this way. The Templars aren't stupid. We don't leave our stuff laying around for treasure hunters to find.
Right.
Yeah.
We take care of our stuff. Now, I will say this, not only do I know exactly what happened, but I know what was put there. And I know what happened to it. And like I said, the Templars aren't stupid. We don't.
And that information.
I'll tell you this, we don't put all of our eggs in one basket, and we sure as hell don't leave our stuff for treasure hunters to find.
So, and that information is going to be in the book?
It will.
It will. And is there?
It's in there. It's already in there.
What's the release date on that?
Depends on, we're going to do this as quickly as possible because obviously from a business standpoint, Oak Island is still airing, and History Channel is all in. They've doubled down on Oak Island, and we offered it to them. They passed. So ready or not, here it comes.
Right. Interesting.
I'll let people decide if they think it's true or not.
Well, it's their number one show, so they're not going to let go of that. I mean,
of course not.
Right.
Of course not. It's a business. And I think it's important that people understand that the people in charge of making decisions for all the networks, they don't give a shit about truth. They don't give a shit about accuracy. It's a business.
The business.
Right. That's what they care about. And that's
all they care. Ratings.
If they happen to get the truth in addition to their money, then, you know, that's a bonus.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry, I hate to disappoint people, but
it's
one
okay.
thing you're never going to get from me is bullshit.
You know, I appreciate that. And I've watched every episode of that show, to be perfectly honest. And the one thing that I will say that it's doing is, you know, intentionally or not, it's rewriting the discovery of America. It's, you know, it blows the Columbus narrative out of the water, which I think is big, you know, that's actually airing on national TV. And, you know, Columbus Day just came, we still celebrate. It's like, okay, when are we going to let go of that? So I do think that it's interesting that at least it's doing that.
It's helping to wake people up to the fact that what we've been taught is not accurate. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, that is part and parcel with where the look, History Channel did our show. We told them everything, right? We gave them plenty of content. I find it interesting that a lot of places that they visited are places that we've already been. So they're doing it in a different context, in a different way, but it's there's from my perspective, they're not sharing anything that's new.
Right.
But anyway, you know, it's they've had a good run, but 10 years after 10 years, if they've proven anything, they've proven that
they spent a lot of money. They've proven that they've spent a lot.
They haven't spent any money. The brothers haven't spent any money. That's BS.
Well, whoever is spending money, I mean, like somebody's spending money on.
They're spending money after. So here's a fun fact. You know, 10 seasons in, they have generated over $1 billion worth of advertising revenue. They aren't spending any money. They're just making money hand over foot. They're all making money.
They're making way more than anything they're spending.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I just find it funny that people buy into this narrative. Oh, they're spending their own money and they're so invested in this. The brothers know there's nothing there. They're just making money.
Well, I didn't I always wonder. I didn't know who was spending the money for all that rigging equipment and those drills and everything. I mean, I'm not surprised, and I'm also not disappointed because I never was attached to it anyway. It's more of one of those things where, everyone likes watching a treasure hunt, so you turn it on and, eventually, but I really appreciate getting,
well, part of me has a bit of an axe to grind because one of the reasons our show was canceled, eventually was not renewed. We were never canceled, but, it's a business, and Oak Island is just making money hand over fist. You got to understand too what it takes to make a show. I mean, we were traveling constantly. Traveling is expensive. We traveled with the crew, and we didn't just go all over the country. We went all over the world, and it's a lot cheaper nowadays because cable television is on the decline. But the other thing is, a lot of these drilling companies that are doing this work for Oak Island, they're getting free advertising. So they're not even charging them in many cases anything. The other thing is, from a tourism standpoint, Canada is also providing money for them because it's helping Canada. So not only are they not spending as much money as people think, a lot of the stuff they're getting is gratis. And good for them. They've created that opportunity. But let's just be honest and be clear about how this works and what's really happening. But good for them. I mean, I would love to get in a situation like that and have people pay for, the equipment and everything. And we did have a lot of that because we did some product placement, and people would donate their time and their effort and their equipment or their material, whatever it was. And that's just how the business works. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah. Right. But it's really, I really appreciate your perspective and hearing the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
It resonates, and obviously, anything that we see on TV. And that's why I asked about the History Channel, or in general, just because I don't know what they're trying to do. You already answered the question as far as, they're not really focused on the truth. They're going to manipulate a storyline or whatever is just going to captivate the audience, generate revenue, whatever the case may be. So, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, in fairness to them, there's building something up. There's emphasizing certain things that may or may not be where you should probably put the emphasis, in my opinion, perhaps. But, there's a difference between sort of stretching the truth and crucifying the truth and actually and lying. I mean, my God, in the last 5 years, we've had so much lying. I'm tired of it. It's not new, but the level of bullshit that's out there in the world, in our politics, I just can't take it anymore. I mean, it's like, stop, right? And in my world, I run a lab. It's all about the truth. That's the only thing that matters. Facts, interpretations, conclusions. We need to get to the truth, because in many cases, people have died, or people might die if we don't get, the right answer. And I see the rest of the world, and I see our politicians, and Jesus,
say no more.
I mean, I don't even know what to say. I mean, and then people sit there and they believe this bullshit. It's like, hello, wake up. I mean, my God, doesn't your spidey sense go off when you know you're being lied to? And
exactly.
Well, that's one of the things that's one of the things we talk about a lot, is like the spidey sense, how your body responds when somebody's lying to you or they're bullshitting.
Yeah.
You should, but we need to learn how to tune into that and understand. So you don't need someone else to tell you. You can just feel for yourself. And something's off.
Well,
here.
Trust your gut. You know that old saying, trust your gut, right? I mean, your gut isn't right every time, but it's right most of the time. And that's an age-old thing that humans have had, this spidey sense, and we just don't use it often enough, I don't think.
Right. Yeah. And maybe your gut is right all the time, but we just misinterpret what it means sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Your gut's telling you something. Your brain has to process it. You have to analyze it, and eventually you have to make a decision, right? And your gut's telling you something. It's right about something, but your analysis isn't always right.
Right. Well, Yeah, I appreciate that. This has been amazing. What kind of future projects do you have coming up? As far as, do you have any more TV shows lined up? Books, obviously. I'm excited about the Oak Island book. I can't wait, actually. But anything that you want to share with the audience?
Well, we do have a new series that we shot. I think I told you, with Gaia, that's going to premiere sometime either around Christmas time or just after the first of the year, that I did with Tim Hogan. It's a 10 episode series called Mysteries of the Knights Templar. And I think people are going to be surprised. The standard narrative of the Templars is not at all what the truth is. And we will tell you the truth about what's going on. So look forward to that. I've got 2 books coming out. The Oak Island book is coming out probably before the other one, which is going to be, I can't remember what the title is, but it's going to be the continuation of my latest book, Cryptic Code of the Templars in America. And it's really going to sort of be the definitive story about exactly what happened, including, these new documents that we got that will include Oak Island. We're not going to emphasize Oak Island in the big book. We do that in the Oak Island book, but this new book that we're going to come out with is going to, we're going to drop some big bombs, and I think it's going to do well. As far as doing new TV shows, we'll see what happens. We have some negotiations that are going on right now. We'll see how it all turns out. I think you will be seeing us doing some other things, but I don't have anything to announce right now. I will tell people, please come to the XCon. It's going to be great. I think it's going to be very intimate. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to present new material. Haley's going to present her new material, and it'll be fun to interact with the people that are there. I think it's going to be one of these things where it's going to be just a little more casual, a little more interactive with the people that are going to be there, as opposed to some of these bigger events. So I really encourage people to come. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, if you have any questions for me directly, go to my blog site, which is scottwolteranswers.blogspot.com. If you're interested in reading any of my books, go to my website, www.hookedx.com, spelled HOOKEDX.com, just the way it sounds. Any books bought on the website, I sign them all, I personalize them. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it for now, but there's a lot of new material coming. Oh, and we will touch on the extraterrestrial aspects that have come through in these documents, especially in the last year and a half. So it's just mind-boggling, but it's all coming together, folks, as we need to come together as a species on this planet to get our act together and look forward to going to the next level if we can do that, which is going to be amazing. So let's all work on that.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the documents and the extraterrestrial aspect of what's covered in there.
I will talk about that
at the conference.
Yes.
Awesome. Definitely looking forward to that. And the link is below in the description, guys, for the UNX Network website, and tickets are still available for the conference. So I'll be speaking there as well. And we'd love to see you out there. And we would love to see you guys out there. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah.
Scott, so
okay, I'll get the first round.
Yeah. Perfect. And thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I love your authenticity and your honesty. I mean, that's how we move forward. This is the age of transparency. We can't operate in secrecy anymore. That's how we got into this mess in the first place.
Exactly.
And, being able to have the humility to self-correct whenever something shows up that challenges your beliefs is so important right now. And I just think that I really appreciate your approach at this. And I look forward to anything that you have coming up. And thanks again. And
thank you for having me, guys. I look forward to the next time. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, sounds great. And thank you guys for tuning in. We love you all. We can't do this without you. Don't forget to sign up for our part 2 of our webinar if you haven't yet. We uncovered a lot of really interesting information as well, even including some old documents that talk about how the Vatican had ordered to seal up some of these old tunnels, which I found really interesting. But there's a lot of gems that we discovered that we're going to be basically announcing on Sunday. So sign up for that. And we look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a great evening. We love you. Good night.
A lot of this information has been kept sort of locked up or kept undercover because of the invasion of the Smithsonian group way back in the 1880s.
What actually happens is it's not taken to preserve it, it's taken to hide it.
And about 4.5 miles from here, a cave was discovered. It's not really a cave as such, it's a man-made cavern system.
But how the hell do you get that much granite? Because the granite on the base of that damn near weighs what the dirt on the top of it weighs. Nobody knows what's underneath it. I've heard a theory that there's a spaceship underneath it.
There was copper and steel plated artifacts that depicted men in armor with shields and helmets.
Including right here at Cahokia, there were reported 2 giants with double rows of teeth and 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Extra vertebrae or extra ribs in their cage. These are different races of people. They're not just regular humans.
Definitely is a stone burial chamber, and there's a large body in it, bones. I would say 15 to 16 feet.
I saw different types of extraterrestrials here with the Native Americans.
The peoples of the Cahokia Mounds actually saw the Birdman as some kind of cosmic being and not a humanoid being.
So this Birdman was the last and the pure and the true of his kind.
So yes, there were rituals, or there were dances and celebrations, and people would dress up like the galactic beings that were visiting. But there were actual physical galactic beings that were visiting.